I've had about a day to reflect on the painting and consider making changes or small things that may improve it. What I'd like to try and do is what we call a glaze. A glaze means we're taking a very thin layer of watercolor and applying it over a very dry painting. So this painting has been drying overnight, and I think it'll accept that glaze just fine. Well, now we're going to do our final version. Doing a little sketching here to get the placement. I like this photograph for the way it presents the shapes. This is home to the Falmouth Road Race, which is a 10K that follows this coast. Follows the coast of Falmouth. Goes right past the lighthouse, of course. But the race is enjoyable and popular because of the views. Few rocks in the shallows. The tide is out a little bit. Some rocks along the shoreline. These will be helpful in the end when we add the final darks. Okay. I think that's about as good as I can make it. There are some other interesting elements. Birds flocking above the lighthouse. So far away though that they're just dots. I don't know if we make a big effort to include them. I love the tall chimneys on the lightkeeper's house. I also like seeing through some of the windows. I might try to do that in the end. Looks like the lighthouse, the light is on. Lots of low brush here. It's really a well manicured area. Little road coming down. We could put a jogger on this road. Nah, we won't do that. We're alone on this morning and enjoying the scenery by ourselves. Right? All right. So this is giving us a pretty broad sky here, and I'm going to kind of open it up, keep it kind of luminous above, a little bit of haze just through here. A little brighter in the eastern sky. I think this is not twilight, but it is sunrise. These lines are difficult because they're at such an angle. But this is showing us the tide kind of ebbing up onto the shoreline, appears back here. And then we put some texture foam through here, a little rolling wave. So we're actually, our eye level is just about here. We're looking up at this and the light tower, and it's just a, you know, kind of centered in this area. And so we're going to use dark against light, some hard edges up here, and a little more quiet. Tones will be closer. The lights and darks will be closer down here, as you see. And but we want to create a luminous feeling, like the light is really bouncing off of things. To do that, we use these graded washes. So we've practiced the graded wash a bit. I think we're now ready to try and apply it, put it into our scene. All right, so I'm going to use the bright, warm yellow sky coming down to a bit of haze on the horizon. So a soft transition to blue. Through here, I'm going to switch to, I'm going to have a little bit of red in the sky and then transition to blue while it's wet. I'm going to bring the red right down to these rocks, leaving a few gaps along the way. And then I'm going to transition to that warmer yellow color through here to pick up on some of the yellows in the sky. All right, and we're compartmentalizing. We're going to divide this painting into two, stopping here on our first go and then finishing with a graded wash here. We let it dry and then we move on. That's the plan. I'm working on a size of paper, a little larger. It's roughly 11 by 15. Maybe 10 by 15. I kind of came down from the top and bottom a little more to give it a more panoramic feel. And I need my special Viva towel. All right. Clean this up a little bit from our graded washes. Well, I hope that you will start to look at your subject matter now, and as you're making your watercolor plan, it's not a bad idea to ask yourself, where can you use this graded wash? My guess is it's going to present itself more and more the more painting you do, and the more you use this graded wash. Here we go. Yellow ochre. I think I have enough. These brownish colors tend to dry like rocks. Okay. Here we go. Building up that bead. Watch as it runs down, starts to gather on the bottom. This is good. And strengthen it a little bit as we come down. We can also give it some legs by doing that. Here I'm going to start to introduce a red in the form of burnt sienna. And a little more yellow ochre, a little bit of that red. Just coming up here. Trying to frame the lighthouse compositionally. That white I'm leaving is the road. And we stop here. Do I want to do anything more while it's wet? A little bit of excitement with the red, a little more. I know it's going to dry somewhat lighter. I'm going to add some burnt sienna. I'm working with all these warm hues for now. We'll come back with, while it's wet, we'll add some blue. Just a little bit of burnt sienna here. Let it bleed in here. All right. And I'm going to now introduce that blue hue. Still wet below through here. Yellow, ultramarine blue. Again, we're kind of mixing the color on the page. Looking for a consistency. Not necessarily a darkness. Like that, I think. Here we go. We give it a try. Want to come just below that red. And it's a little easier to come down. Taking advantage of that transparent watercolor. Not really painting the shrubs or ground or anything at this point, just creating the shadow. That will come in the next stage. Okay, I like it. I think it's close enough. Let's move to the water, the graded wash on the water. So we're going to kind of repeat those colors. Yellow, followed by a little bit of red, and a little less red in this case, and a little more of the graded blue at the bottom. Right. So let's do that. Let's pick this up first before we start. I'm going to start with that warmish hue, a little bit of orange, a lot of yellow ochre. And start to create this. Stop short here. Through here, more yellow ochre, kind of through here, this area. Just yellow ochre, maybe a few whites. And let's now add some deeper hues. Burnt sienna, cad orange red. Into the water a little bit. And some of the blue, no, not yet, yellow ochre. It's a little too. I'm going to pick up that bead if I can. Okay, and then let's add some blue to this as well. Same mixture of ultramarine. Excuse me. I'm going to go a little darker down here. Darker still. Now we do have some blue in the water too. I think I'm going to use a dry brush for that when the time comes. Something like that. Graded wash down to the ground, and a graded wash can be a little smoother, I think, but I want to leave some highlights a little darker. Round 2. Our painting is dried off. You can still see the important pencil lines here. And it's time to construct the dark tone. Okay. I'm using a nice big sablette. Keeps a good point if I need it, but I can carry a lot of liquid to the page too, should I need that. And we'll start with a mixture of a little bit of burnt sienna, sepia, warm hue, a little bit of ultramarine blue, kind of a mid-strength color. And I guess I'd like to get some coverage here. Maybe it's a good idea to start where this road kind of bends. This is the good thing about a nice brush, is it really holds the pigment. I can go forever with one brush full of pigment. Now let's use that same mixture with a little more burnt sienna right up here in the tops of these bushes. We'll keep making a little variation. Now let's mix a little more blue with that. More blue. Introduce it, mix it up with this color. Maybe a little lavender. So we go back and forth. We're mixing on the paper quite a bit in this lesson. Or a bit more burnt sienna. Especially when we get this house. Fussy, fussy. Fussy, fussy, fussy. But these edges are kind of important, aren't they? Okay, close enough. Let's go with a little more blue into the lighthouse while this edge is still wet. So these edges are very hard, firm edges, painted on dry paper, and really define our focal point. So we got to be a little careful, a little precise, more so than below. Right. Still want stuff to mix and merge as I move through this. Carrying some blue up here as well. Down. Introduce a little blue into the houses because I feel it's just a little too hot. Using lavender with a bit of water, which is a nice combination with this burnt sienna, and into a wet area, so it's going to spread out. I'll leave the periphery kind of warm. Okay, basically good. Let's start to work into the lower section. Right through here. It's a nice place to go a little dark. And we'll put some dry brush here because we want to keep a lot of that blue in the shore. I don't want to cover everything. Same two colors, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. Just a little bit of slope to the seashore. This is dry brush technique, so we're getting some broken edges. Just blurring that a little bit. Look at how that sweeps down and the water kind of mixes the colors. Very pleasing to me. course, some things can look wonderful when they're wet. Then when they dry, it's like, I don't know. Some more dry brush. As the tide pulls back, we get these long, streaky things in the water. Kelp or rocks or horseshoe crabs. Very suggestive. So I put them in. Take one more blue across here. Before I do that, though, let me just bring this up again. Yeah, let's take ultramarine blue to this wet area. It'll give us a nice counter to all the warms in here. So now we're painting more based on our painting. We're trying to balance the color based on what's happening. And we're at the stage where this is actually more productive because the temptation is always there to follow, to restate what's in the source image. And that sometimes means you end up losing something you have or forgetting about what you have, and that usually doesn't work out so well. So in this case, I am really just kind of watching my painting and balancing everything against that. This white that we've left is too bright. I know that. That will be one of the last things we tone down. Let's watch this and see what it does. So I kind of like it. Well, I'm starting to like it more as it dries, as it settles. And I think when I add some strong darks, it's going to complement this work. So let's run it off a little this way. Right now, all the paint is kind of drifting straight down, and I'm worried it's going to come too far down, so I'm going to just guide it off the page here. A little bit, so we get most of that going off. Okay, let's do a little bit on this right side. We're going to bring in some waves, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red, ultramarine blue, a little bit of this red, orangey color that's up here. I'm going to favor the blue though. And we start to create this kind of rolling surf. Some dry brush. Pounding surf. And then we put some longer breaking waves. A little more blue back here underneath some of these whites. Slight angle. Give us a feeling of that surf. I think this is about the best I can do. Might put a little bit of rose on that, the top of the waves once it dries. I'm looking at my waves and seeing little dips and pockets, and I want to kind of place those while it's wet. See if I can get more of a rolling quality. Especially in the forward waves. Now then, let's put some darks into the lighthouse, regain that focal area. So right at the top, there's a nice strong dark. We're not going to go quite that dark because it's so far in the distance, but a little more than is there now. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, a little dark. The lighthouse. Now that really comes out as a focal area, doesn't it? And we will put some windows and some decorative marks on there as well. Some little pieces, nuances that I forgot. I'm going to put here. See the way the color has kind of done its own thing? It's an example of let watercolor do half of the work. I know I'm happier. I think you'll be happier too. And it's kind of, I guess, based on, there's a trust factor there that you, okay, I believe it's going to work. You just let it dry and see what happens. You should know too that we can always correct it. We can always go back and add something or diminish something. It's not like it's set in stone. These guys are set in stone because they are stone. Let's put some stones. Stone, another stone. Reflection. Use that finger. Paint the stone. This stone. Drag down a little reflection. Makes that shiny wet sand look even brighter. I'm going to add a few more. Where would they look good? One here. Use that as a highlight. Little dry brush. That's not dry, but into a wet area. Liven up that flat area. A little bit of brush at an angle. Bring some life to the shadows. This is the rocky area. I'm kind of breaking this up a little bit. Details. So at this point, many details. I want to account for some of these details, but as few as possible. Look at how that dry brush is dried. I think we can come back in to a little stronger stuff, a little sepia. little ultramarine blue, and put a few more of those on in a dry fashion. Okay, I step back and I like it. I think it looks good. I do want to do some architecture. First, a little dry brush. Into the area that I've already painted. Notice how that immediately brings it forward. My thought is to return to this area and just a light wash of warm color over this, tone it down, bring a little more focus up here, and then stop. So the painting has had 24 hours to dry. I'm using a big wide brush. I'm going to be taking a little of this cad, a little of this yellow through here. Looking for an orangish hue. Of course, you could use an orange if you have it in the tube. Rather pale. Just do a little touch here. Okay. I think that'll be all right. Well, we'll see, won't we? Do I have enough? Let's make sure we have enough. I don't want to have to remix it. Used this cad orange red and a little cad yellow to make this color. So we really load up the brush. Plenty of liquid on dry paper. Here we go. And we don't want to make too many strokes, because the more strokes we make, there's a chance we're going to loosen a lot of the paint here. All the way down to the bottom. Getting just a little dry effect through here. I'm going to keep that. And that's it, really. That's it. And it's going to dry slightly paler. Some of the color will come out a little more. We do have some gaps in the wash here, here, a little bit down here. But by and large, we're muting this area. We're making it a little quieter, a little more subtle, with the hope of giving a little more attention to the sky. So I'm curious to see how this dries. I think it'll be okay. But with this sort of painting, by this sort of painting, I mean the time of day where things are very quiet, soft, and a lot is happening in the shadows. The control between your darkest dark and your lightest light is very minimal. I mean, the span. And so I felt maybe just a little too much brightness down here. I want there to be brightness, but I want the contrast to be a little closer, not as much contrast with what's going on up here. So I mute that area. Already I can feel a little more gravity up here. I'm going to put just a little more of this orange across the windows. Quiet them down a little bit. I quieted the road down a little bit. Still visible, still there, but only when our eyes kind of settle in on this do we see the nuances that are going on down here. And you can tell it has muted this area quite a bit. And by doing that, it strengthens or makes this a little more of a powerful draw up above. So everything is measured against center of interest, right? The center of interest is always our lighthouse. We kind of balance everything against that. Sometimes it's a really obvious contrast. Sometimes it's a more subtle contrast. In this painting, I introduced this blue, which isn't in our image, because I wanted the contrast to be a little more subtle, a little more quiet. It's still quite loud up here, but we need that. And that's the reason behind doing this adjustment.